Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. I am one of your co hosts, Mike, and with me is.
Ethan here. Good to be with you all, and good to be with you, Mike slash
Nice to see you,
Dad.
Ethan, son, everybody. Yeah, we are, we're putting out some efficient podcasts. We are committed to a set of podcasts that are kind of for your commute back and forth to work, maybe 20 minutes is our goal. And so, Ethan, let's hold each other accountable to keeping these to 20 minutes if we can.
Nobody has a 20-minute commute where I live.
Oh, okay. Well, where I live, they are. We do. We do.
Right. Well, you have a 1-minute commute from your
I
bed
have
to
it.
your yeah.
That's true. That's true. Okay, then. So we've already wasted time, but no, that's all right. Let's go forward. We are we're talking today about we're continuing to talk about having conversations with employees, feedback conversations. Our last episode was about Birch, and so we're going to add some thoughts to that. But before we do that, Ethan, I wanted to ask you to kind of dialogue with me about. Um, we know it's important that we build relationship with employees. We know that we want to build that bank account. We have this psychological contract, but we also have to sometimes have hard conversations, right? We have to, you know, confront, and maybe that's not the right word, but give feedback to an employee. I guess a couple of questions. I'll give both of them to you. Why is it important that we continue to focus on that psychological contract even during these feedback conversations? And maybe what are a couple ways we do that, right? So let's start with the why. Why does it matter so much that we continue to build that bank account with employees even while we're having these tough conversations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so the psychological contract is essentially, the more I sense that you're invested in me relationally as a human being, the more willing and able I am to what we might just say kind of volunteer our hearts and minds, right? To volunteer our hearts and minds back into the team, the organization, to our kind of employee manager relationship. And this is just a kind of a core human principle, right? When I sense someone cares about me and is invested in me, I'm going to be able to be engaged with what's going on here. Okay. Now, doing this, right? Creating this psychological contract with my employees. I mean, it's always happening, right? In all my interactions, but it still absolutely can happen in really hard feedback conversations. In fact, I would even posit that when done well, those hard conversations, conflict, when you can navigate through that together well, it is a great opportunity to build that psychological contract. So, to your
Yes.
to your question, nobody likes getting negative, critical, corrective feedback, right? And so when we can both still be clear and give corrective performance or behavioral feedback and still show that I actually still care about you, I'm curious about you, I'm invested in you, I want to help you and see you kind of work through this because I want to see you succeed. That feedback might not feel good, but I can still walk away feeling like, yeah, that kind of sucked, but my manager, I sense they're in my corner here. And that's going to
Yes.
create more motivation for me to probably make those changes. Uh, so,
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's really good, Ethan. That's really well put. And what tag right onto that would be, as you're showing up that way, the way you described, with care, curiosity, that the employee knows you're in their corner, that also is helping them uh, process what you're saying more likely through their prefrontal cortex. They're going to be less in their sympathetic nervous system. They're going to be less defensive. You're actually making it easier and more likely for them to hear and benefit from your feedback because you've reduced their defensiveness. So Yeah, so let's talk about how we do that. We In our last episode, we reminded and reviewed with everyone the Birch acronym, specifically the BIR of feedback, behavior, impact, replacement behavior. Sometimes, depending on where we are in progressive conversations, add a conversation about the consequence, which was the C. H, how I can help. We're going to add another acronym to that to kind of balance it out in a way. And so we're going to add the acronym called CARE, appropriately, CARE. And we're going to add this because I just say that when I first learned Birch and when I was practicing it in kind of role play situations, my hang up was that I was just going forward. Like I was B, I, R, shut up. I'm not to the C yet. H, kind of like just bam, 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 bam. It's almost like I made it into a little monologue sort of speech to the employee. So I was super clear. Like the Birch helped me be really, really clear. But it wasn't necessarily relational at the same time because I was missing some of the kind of the key elements of relationship building there. So what care does is it adds the balancing piece. So Birch is clear. The care analogy helps us make sure that we stay relational. So why don't we get into that I'll just throw the C out at you, Ethan. Let's talk about the C of care. That stands for
Curiosity. Yeah, curiosity. I mean, it's about asking questions, right? It's the difference between here's the behavior, here's the impact of that behavior, and here's a replacement behavior, but it's kind of mixing in curiosity and questions throughout that conversation, right? And we're not talking about like, why are you still doing this? Why did you do this? Why questions just feel accusatory and kind of puts people in a corner. But we're talking about what we describe as kind of respectful inquiry. These are questions like, if you're giving feedback on behavior, hey, look at, I'm still seeing you, you're talking over people in our team meetings, right? And we had talked about this before. I'm still seeing it. Um, what's when you're in those moments, I'm honestly just curious, like what's going on? What's going on with you there, right?
yeah.
Kind of opening up like a dialogue of around, maybe they're feeling like they're not getting a chance to speak, and so they have to jump in. But right, we're opening it up with kind of questions like that.
Yeah, it turns it into dialogue. I love that. The curiosity not just shows your interest, it shows some humility. It invites them into this discussion as a partner. It creates more conversation. It gives them a chance to be heard. Yeah, that's really good. That's curiosity. Can we do a couple of cautions? You mentioned the first one. Why'd you do that? That causes defensiveness. Also, too many questions. I think it can almost start to feel like a interrogation if you're just constantly asking questions.
Hmm.
Um, so, and also I would also make sure we avoid the condescending. So, Ethan, what do you think the impact is of that behavior? That kind of makes it sound like, you need to guess what's in my head sort of questions. So there's an art to this, yeah, we start with curiosity.
And it could be like, how are you seeing this situation,
Good.
right?
Yep.
What
Yep.
what might you be noticing here that I might not be noticing, or what might I be missing as I'm kind of observing these behaviors, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It might be what's in the way. What are the roadblocks you're facing? What's preventing you from being successful? Yeah. Good. Let's
And then,
do A.
yeah.
Affirmations. Affirmations. Is there something generally related to what we're talking about in this conversation that I am impressed with, or that I can point out where you've been successful? It might even be some effort and some progress since last time we talked, right? That might be something you can affirm. It might be something related to their work or let's say, like I like your example, the thing that we're talking about still is their meeting behavior. But in meetings, quite often when they do speak up, it's spot on. Like what they say is super helpful. it'd just be nice if they weren't interrupting people, right? So being able to kind of bring something up that relates to the negative, but helps them see that you're seeing the whole story. You're not just picking on the negative.
Yeah. This could be, um, hey, one thing you really bring to the table that I appreciate is that you just have a lot of ideas and a lot of creative ideas, and we need that on our team. Right. And I appreciate that. Right. And it's the and it's like, and I got to make sure other people have a chance to share their ideas as well. Right. Maybe some people that are more take more time to process. So again, you're saying this is, how I've seen this be done well is someone actually points out that this behavior that you're actually giving corrective feedback on in other situations is an asset. It's a strength,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Which is often where feedback comes from, right? Our behaviors in one context is an asset, in another context is a liability. To say this is good, and in this situation, what here's how it might need to be adjusted. So.
Yep, that's good. And another reason we give affirmation is it's really a psychological thing. It tells the employee kind of where they stand right now. Because here's the thing: when I'm getting corrective feedback, there's fear. Let's just face it. There, I mean, when a person with a power differential is giving me some kind of corrective feedback, there's quite likely going to be some anxiety and some fear, and that fear can lead to, oh my gosh, what's going on? Am I in big trouble? Am I being fired? Am I what's happening? So pointing out something that I appreciate about you that you do really well brings the temperature way down. It makes it less likely that I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, right?
Hmm. Good. So we have, again, in our CARE acronym here, we have curiosity, which is about, again, respectful inquiry. It's about humility. It's about seeking to understand from their perspective what's going on. Then we have affirmation, which is about noticing the positive, noticing the good, noticing where this behavior is actually a benefit in other circumstances. Right? Notice where they've made progress already. So curiosity, affirmation. Then we have R, which is reflective listening, which sounds a lot like what it sounds like. Right. So, but when you've given feedback, some hard corrective feedback to someone, they usually just kind of take it without any pushback, right? Especially me, right?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. In fact, thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it always turns out. Right.
Right, right.
No, but
No.
people express their concerns maybe with the situation or how they see it differently or pushing back because they don't necessarily know it's a problem or they have reasons why it's happening. Um, and I think our instinct at that time is to get into a little bit of like an argument, and it becomes about proving I'm right rather than learning. And so reflective listening is really giving them a chance to be like, okay, you have a perspective here, and that actually matters. I want to hear that perspective. So
Mhm.
reflective listening, like um what more do you want to say about that? Is there more to say about that?
Well, yeah, I think you're spot on there. I think this is a little counterintuitive, I think, for managers up front, because it almost feels like, hey, I'm giving this feedback and I need to sort of be in control of this conversation, and I don't want it to go sideways, and I don't want to go down rabbit trails, and that's partly true. There's certain things we can do to make sure that we don't spend too much time going down those rabbit trails and that we do continue to move forward in the conversation. However, the problem that I see is that, I give the feedback and then the other person pushes back a little bit or gets defensive, and then we push back against their pushback. And it suddenly the defensiveness just goes through the ceiling. And so instead, again, it's counterintuitive, but to be able to stop and really hear what the person's saying. Hey, tell me more about that, Ethan. Tell me, help me understand your concern. And just listening with that curiosity we've already talked about, reflecting back what you're hearing. Okay, so this is what I hear you're saying. I mean, here's the bottom line: when people feel heard and respected, they are so much more likely to be non-defensive and open and actually willing to grow and change, right? And so if I can get out of that, I'm the boss that has to be in charge of this conversation, or I have to win this conversation. If I can get out of that and remember to think of this as two people having a conversation, You need to be heard, respected, listened to. So yeah, it's paraphrasing, it's eye contact, it's asking good questions. All the things that we talk about when we talk about really good listening should show up right here in this conversation.
Yeah. There is something extremely powerful that when somebody pushes back or expresses a concern with the thing you're giving feedback on, and then you can listen to that and then reflect what you heard back to them as good, if not better, than they stated it themselves. It it opens up the conversation to kind of be able to continue to progress to that person because that person feels respected and heard in that moment, right?
Yes.
When you say, "Hey," so what I'm hearing is that when you are speaking up in these meetings, you're really doing it to try to move the conversation along, and you're really doing it to try to prompt other people to be speaking up and contributing. Do I have that right? And
Yes.
then when
Yes.
people
That's
say,
exactly what's going
"Yeah,
on.
that's right," you're in a good place when you hear, "Yeah, that's right," because they felt
Hmm.
heard, right? And it's
Yes.
like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand that,
It,
and that makes sense," right? So you kind of can validate as well, and then you can continue to have the conversation around where adjustment can still be made. But yeah, I mean, the reflective listening is just a key component here.
yeah. And going into the conversation, then you want to go in with taking care of your own emotions and needs so that you can come in and really be fully present and be willing to give and take like that. It's such an important part of the conversation.
Yeah. So we got curiosity, we have affirmation, we have reflective listening. And then last but certainly not least is the E, which is for empathy, which is, you know, expressing in some way that you understand what they're feeling or experiencing. Either in this moment when you're having the hard feedback conversation, what they're feeling, or maybe what they're experiencing and feeling in the moments where those behaviors
Hmm.
are popping up.
Yes. Yep.
Um, but empathy is really the magic ticket here for a good conversation, right? Someone feeling
Yeah.
like they're connected. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, the reflective listening helps the person feel seen and heard, which is, like you said, so important. And then the empathy helps me feel cared about. Like I get you and I care, right? And it really is I'm understanding what you're up against. I understanding why this is difficult. And actually, I like the way you broke that down. I hadn't really thought of it this way before, but it's empathy right now. I'm just going to repeat what you said. It's empathy right now because you're feeling some things right now, including just having to have this conversation with me, or whatever. But also, yeah, I can understand in that situation what you're feeling. So I think that's really good to break it down in those two ways.
Well, so winding up on our time here. I mean, there you have it. There's the care, curiosity, affirmation, reflective listening, and empathy. The thing I really like about the care acronym is that when I am going into the conversation to have feedback in the moment, I may not actually remember what each one of those letters stand for, but I do remember care, and that's enough of a principle to probably make me do most or at least some of those things pretty well. If I'm remembering care, I'm going to be thinking already about empathy, right? About actually listening, about having a conversation. And the other thing I would just mention is that, like, for anybody out there listening to this, when you look at the acronym of care, curiosity, affirmation, reflective listening, empathy, you're probably doing well at some of those already. And so my encouragement for you would be look at that, notice what you might already be doing well, and then pick one of those letters that you want to start adding into those conversations. So I feel like, hey, look at I exercise curiosity really well in these conversations. What I need to start focusing on is a little bit more of the kind of the affirmation part of it, and I'm going to focus on that for a while, right? That can be kind of a nice progression to kind of build these skills rather than trying to take them all of these at once and think you're going to remember all four of these things, right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then finally, let's kind of wrap up with kind of where we started. Remember the cool sort of mixing care in with the birch conversation, right? And so you've got your BIRCH, and you're mixing in the elements of care. There's just a beautiful way to balance clarity with relationship building. So there you go. Look at that. We're just under 20 minutes, Ethan.
Right. Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Tune
Thanks.
in next time.